My name is Hasina, and perhaps this name became the greatest symbol of my life, and the biggest punishment, too. Since childhood, the mirror was my best friend, and anyone who saw me would pause, caught in my gaze. My skin was as fair as milk, my eyes deep, hair black and thick, and my height was such that it felt as if God Himself had sculpted me. Wherever I went in the neighborhood, women would look at me with envy, and men, while averting their gaze, couldn't help but praise me. Amma would laugh and say, "Hasina, you are our pride. One day your fate will elevate us too." But Abba would always remain silent. In his eyes, there was both pride and fear. When I turned 16, our doorbell began ringing more than usual. Every other day, someone would come with a marriage proposal, sometimes a cousin's son, sometimes a stranger, just to catch a glimpse of me. I would shyly retreat inside, but the remarks that found their way through the walls reached my ears. "What a breathtaking beauty. She deserves a prince. A girl like her should fear her own fate." I didn't understand much then, but I did begin to realize that my face was becoming bigger than my destiny. My father was a school teacher, quiet, book-loving, and steadfast in his principles. He made it clear, my daughter will only marry after completing her graduation. He used to say, "Hasina is not just beautiful, she will be educated and empowered too." But not everyone digested this well, especially my aunt, whose son Faraz had quietly drawn an invisible circle of claim around me since childhood. Auntie would often say to Amma, "Delaying a proposal invites the evil eye." Amma would fall silent, but Abba stood firm. Faraz tried several times to talk privately with Abba, pleaded with him, but Abba always replied the same. "Hasina is still a child. Let her grow first." This wounded my aunt deeply. Slowly, bitterness crept into her words and mistrust into her behavior. One day, she stopped visiting altogether. Amma tried everything, apologized, stood with tearful eyes at her door, but my aunt never looked back. Faraz too turned away. The crack that had formed in our relations deepened with each passing day. But Abba remained resolute. He personally took charge of my education. After school, he would teach me, check my assignments, and believed in my success even more than I did. I also immersed myself in studies. Perhaps my father's silent hopes gave my courage wings. When I topped the district in intermediate, my photo appeared in the newspaper. The neighborhood women, who once praised only my beauty, now spoke of my intellect too. But even in those moments of joy, my aunt's silence, her closed door, remained in my mind. One day, Abba said to Amma, "If only the proposal hadn't been refused, perhaps today they would be proud of our daughter's success." Amma sighed and replied softly, "Some people don't just take back proposals, they carry their ego with them." Time passed. I entered my BA and I became more convinced that knowledge not only refines a woman, but teaches her to live with dignity. In the neighborhood, people began to call me Master Sahib's pride. When Abba smiled at me, peace filled his eyes. My beauty now carried another identity, the glow of intelligence. But as soon as I completed my graduation, Abba gathered the family and made an announcement. "Now we are ready to find a match for Hasina." At this news, many closed doors began to open again. Uncles, aunts, cousins, all proposed their sons' names. But my aunt remained silent. Neither she nor Faraz made a move. Abba tried to mend the relationship, but my aunt's silence had now taken the shape of a storm. Finally, my father arranged my engagement with my uncle's son, Hamdan. This time, everything happened very quickly. The preparations were done, guests arrived, music was played, and I, Hasina, the most beautiful and capable daughter of the family, was sitting dressed in my bridal attire. My eyes were filled with hope and my heart brimmed with dreams. I thought everything would finally be okay. But little did I know, the real story was just about to begin. In the silence of the night, as I sat in my crimson dress, my breaths were heavy, the henna on my hands still moist, and my eyes swimming with dreams. The house echoed with happiness, prayers, and laughter. Everyone showered me with blessings. "May your fate be blessed. May the bride rule her home." Yet the absence of my aunt pierced my heart like a silent wound. Amma's eyes kept glancing at the door, as if one last hope remained, but neither she came nor her son Faraz. After the wedding, when I was sent off to my uncle's house, I was embraced as if I were a sacred gift. My aunt-in-law placed her hand on my head and said, "You've brought light to our home, dear." I felt as if I was finally stepping out of sorrow into a new journey, one filled with light, love, and a fresh beginning. They led me to my room, a beautiful space draped with white curtains and soft pink sheets, where a new name, a new identity, and a new life partner awaited me. In my heart, I offered a prayer of gratitude that everything had gone so smoothly. Though my heart was nervous, the glow of hope overshadowed that fear. But time began to pass. 10 o'clock, 11, midnight. Hamdan hadn't come. My heart started to beat faster, as if something strange was about to happen. By 2 in the morning, the room's silence began to suffocate me. Suddenly, a noise echoed from outside the door, like someone had screamed, like someone was running. I rushed out, frightened. I saw my uncle running down the street like a madman. Neighbors were gathering. My aunt was sitting on the floor, beating her chest. I couldn't understand anything, only heard one word, Hamdan. My heart seemed to stop, my tongue trembled. What happened to Hamdan? Then someone whispered softly. He had gone to say goodbye to his friends at the end of the street. Truck hit him. He died on the spot. Before the sentence could even finish, the ground beneath my feet vanished. The one for whom I had adorned my hands with henna, whose name I now bore, with whom I had built dreams of a lifetime, he left me forever on our very first night. The room where the first spark of love was to be lit now felt like a graveyard. The soft pink bedsheets now looked blood-stained. The fragrances were gone, the prayers silenced, and the laughter turned to wails. On my wedding night, I became a widow. The whole neighborhood began whispering, "She's cursed." She stepped in and death followed. This is what beauty leads to. She brought misfortune with her. The same admirers of my beauty now called me unlucky. Every eye that once looked at me with love now looked at me with suspicion. But my uncle and aunt embraced me like their own daughter. My aunt kissed my forehead and said, "We don't care what people say. You are our daughter. Our daughter." The tears left her eyes before they left mine. Their strength entered my soul. A few days later, Abba and Amma brought me back home. It was like something inside me had died. I stopped speaking. I would just sit by the window and stare at the sky, as if asking it, why? Why only me? One day, Amma hugged me and cried, "My child, why is happiness never written in your fate?" Abba was silent, as if his strength had given way, but in his eyes I saw resolve once again. He placed his hand on my forehead and said, "Hasina, this world is not meant for stopping, it's meant for rising. We will once again take a step toward your happiness." And then, it was like a dream breathed life again. Abba began searching for proposals once more. He met people, talked, and assured them that his daughter had done nothing wrong. And then, one day, my aunt, the same one who had once brought a proposal, returned with another one, this time for her son, Jamal. Hope flickered again in Amma's eyes. Abba paused for a moment, perhaps remembering the bitter days gone by, then he nodded silently, and the proposal was accepted. This time, the wedding was simple. No grand procession, no noise, just a few close people and heartfelt prayers. I tucked away the grief of Hamdan into a corner of my heart and once again stepped onto the threshold of fate. With Jamal, it was a new beginning, but I was no longer the same. I had grown afraid of happiness. And that fear, Isan, struck my soul hard when once again that same calamity knocked on my door. This second marriage carried with it a buried hope, one that survived only on the belief that maybe, just maybe, destiny would show me mercy. Jamal, my aunt's son, had been mentioned several times in the past in relation to me. He was gentle, educated, and seemingly full of life. But an unshakable fear had settled in my heart, the kind that came with the word marriage, which now felt synonymous with a shroud. The farewell ceremony passed quietly, no band, no drums, no celebration. I kept telling myself that perhaps in this simplicity lay a hidden blessing. Perhaps this time things would be different. Upon arriving at Jamal's house, his mother lovingly kissed my forehead. "Daughter, you are now the honor of our home," she said. But the emptiness inside me refused to be filled. As night fell, the room was full of light, yet my heart was drowning in darkness. Jamal entered the room. He was quiet, as if he understood the state of my heart. He smiled gently and said, I know what you've been through, but I promise, I will give you a new life. He had barely sat down when sweat began to bead on his forehead. I asked anxiously, Jamal, are you all right? He gave a faint smile. It's nothing. Just tiredness, maybe. But the next moment he leaned backward in the chair, nearly collapsing. I screamed and rushed forward to hold his head. His body was drenched in sweat, as if burning from within. I flung the door open and called everyone. The house echoed with panic. A car was brought around and Jamal was rushed to the hospital. As we ran through the emergency entrance, the doctor's words echoed in my ears. A severe heart attack. I prayed helplessly, begged every second, asked my Lord over and over, is death written in every chapter of my life? Will every door I step through turn into a grave? At dawn, the doctor finally emerged from the ward. His face wore the same expression of silence I had seen once before when Hamdan had passed. He simply said, "We're sorry." Jamal, too, was gone. Second marriage, second night, second funeral. Once again, I was called a widow. But this time, people weren't whispering behind closed doors. They were speaking openly, linking my beauty with my curse. The aunt who had brought this proposal lost her mind in grief. Her screams echoed off the walls. "This girl is cursed! She devoured my son!" And not only did she throw me out of the house, but she severed all ties with me and my parents forever. I returned to Abba's home, empty-eyed, hollow-hearted, with a body that now felt aged before its time. Amma broke down in tears when she saw me. Abba closed his eyes, perhaps in grief or shame or from the helplessness of having dressed his daughter twice as a bride only to wrap her in mourning each time. For many days, silence reigned in our house. I locked myself in my room. No food, no conversation, no dreams, no prayers. Just darkness surrounding me from all sides. A few nights later, Amma sat beside me. In her hands, she held my childhood. In her voice, the patience of a mother. But in her eyes, an unfamiliar helplessness. She said softly, "Daughter, we never wished harm upon anyone. Why is all this happening to us?" My father, seeing my mother's despair, once again showed the kind of strength only a father can. "This is the blow of fate, but we will not give up," he said. And once again he declared, "We will find a new match for Hasina." Inside me, emotions swirled in confusion. Part of me wanted everything to end, to never hope again. But somewhere deep within, a small corner of my heart whispered, maybe this time will be different. Yet another thought crept in. Was this all just coincidence? Or was there some shadow, some curse that was ruining my life? These questions kept me awake at night. I had begun to fear even my own reflection. One night, I had a terrifying dream. I stood in a graveyard, before 4 graves, 4 white shrouds, and my name carved on each of them. I screamed and jolted awake, drenched in sweat. As I opened the door in panic, I saw my father standing outside. Concerned, he stepped forward. For the first time, I broke down in his arms, all my silence melting into one moment of surrender. He gently stroked my head and said, "Hasina, your pain is no longer just yours. It is mine too. This is a test from God, and I will pray to our Lord that this time, just this once, He allows you to smile again." But what was coming this time was not just another test. It was a mystery, a turning point that would rewrite my past, reshape my present, and alter my future. I used to think even pain had its limits, but perhaps grief knows no boundaries in my destiny. After Jamal's death, I had become like stone. My mother's eyes were permanently red from crying, and my father's silence was now a suffocating presence in our home. Yet only a few months passed before my father, his back already bent under the weight of time, once again began the search for a new proposal. He couldn't bear the thought of his daughter living forever with the label of widow. To me, this was incomprehensible. I could not even imagine another relationship. But my father's determination was like a mountain, and I had become a silent shadow of myself. Within weeks, a new proposal was finalized. This time, the man belonged to a religious and respectable family, a kind-hearted, pious young man. The marriage was simple, quiet. I surrendered myself to this new bond, without hope of love, without any dreams. Just acceptance. On our wedding night, he entered the room. There was fear in his eyes, as if he too knew of the funerals that followed me. He smiled faintly and said, "I pray that nothing goes wrong this time." But perhaps the prayer died before it could even reach the heavens. He stepped out to perform ablution. The staircase was just beside the room. Moments later, I heard a loud crash, like something heavy had fallen. I rushed to the door, and what I saw snatched the ground from beneath my feet. My husband, the man who had prayed for life moments earlier, lay lifeless at the bottom of the stairs. His neck was broken, blood pooled beneath him. People screamed and gathered. This was my fourth marriage, and my fourth wedding night. Can you imagine? I was still a virgin. No man had ever touched me. Yet the world called me a widow, 4 times over. But this time, things were different. My relatives not only cut ties with my parents, but completely ostracized us socially. They said, "She's cursed. Wherever she goes, death follows. Keeping her in your home is a sin." My father had already retired from teaching. The household now ran on a small pension that barely lasted beyond the 15th of each month. My mother's health declined steadily. Her eyes were always swollen red, as though she never stopped crying. That's when I made a decision. I had to do something for myself. I began tutoring children in the neighborhood. From morning to evening, students came and went. For those few hours, my heart found distraction, but the moment silence returned, the storm of memories would rise again. Then one day, a boy came. Shehzad. A 14-year-old student, he would walk across 2 neighborhoods to attend my class. He was in 9th grade, smart, but quiet. At first, he seemed like any other student, but day by day, he began to come closer to my heart. I taught him with all my heart. Sometimes, when the other children had left, he would stay back for a while. Talking to him gave me peace, like a lost connection gently soothing my soul. Then one day, something strange happened. Shehzad was sitting with me. All the other children had gone. It was the anniversary of my mother's passing, and my heart had been heavy all day. I stopped him and said, "Don't go today. Just stay with me a little longer." He agreed quietly, listening to everything I said. I began to cry and poured out all the pain in my heart. He just listened, silently, his eyes calm and his hands offering quiet comfort. Evening turned to night and we lost track of time. Suddenly, there was a loud knock on the door. I jumped. When I opened it, Shehzad's parents were standing there, worry etched on their faces and sternness in their expressions. I became nervous and immediately apologized, inviting them inside. Shehzad's mother looked into my eyes and asked, "Sister, is everything all right? You look very tired." I didn't say anything, I just nodded. But the weight in my chest wouldn't go away. Despite myself, I spoke up. I told them everything. The fate of my 4 marriages, the collapse of my parents, and how my own identity had been reduced to dust. Shehzad's father remained quiet. He was the local mosque's imam, known to be gentle and wise. As he listened to my story, his forehead creased as if he knew something he could sense but hadn't yet confirmed. Then he said softly, "My daughter, what you've described, it doesn't feel natural. There's something else going on here." I looked at him in surprise. My heart skipped a beat. He continued, "I will return tomorrow. There's something important I need to speak to you about." And in that moment, for the first time, I felt, maybe, just maybe, the real beginning of my story was about to unfold. That night, after Shehzad's parents left, a strange unease crept over me. The seriousness in his father's eyes wouldn't let me sleep. All night, his words echoed in my mind, "This doesn't feel natural." My heart whispered that perhaps he knew something I didn't. But my mind struggled. If this isn't coincidence, then what is it? The next evening, just as he had promised, Shehzad's father returned, this time with his wife and Shehzad. There was a curious calmness on their faces, along with a look of revelation, like they had found an answer they had been seeking for years. I asked them to sit down and served tea, but I myself remained silent. He was the one to begin speaking. Daughter Hasina, what I'm about to say may sound strange to you, but what's happened in your life cannot be explained on a worldly level. 4 marriages and each husband dies on the wedding night? That is not a coincidence. The moment I saw you, I felt an inexplicable heaviness. And last night, when I heard your story, my heart confirmed it. There is something unnatural going on. I kept listening in silence, but my heartbeat quickened. The imam took a folded paper from his pocket. On it were Arabic verses and strange markings. My daughter, I've been performing spiritual healing and ruqya for years. When I returned home from your house last night, I performed ablution and prayed 2 units of voluntary prayer. Then I asked Allah, if this woman is under any kind of spiritual affliction, please show me the truth. My eyes widened. And then, I asked, my voice trembling. He replied, I saw a dream. A woman in black clothing, sitting around a burning candle, reciting something. Around her were the bones of animals and a clay doll. Your name was written on it, Hasina bint Amina. I woke up in a shock, and I became certain you are the victim of black magic. This magic was cast to prevent you from ever being with a man, and any man who marries you becomes a target of death. My hands began to tremble. It felt as though a heavy stone had been placed on my heart. But who did this? And why? I asked, barely able to breathe. The imam took a deep breath. That night, I continued seeking answers. I recited specific verses and prayed for divine guidance. And what I was shown was truly terrifying. I was fully alert now. Shehzad sat silently as well, as if he understood everything. My daughter, this black magic, was done by none other than your maternal aunt. The one who once proposed her son Faraz for your hand in marriage. But your father refused, saying you had to complete your education first. She couldn't bear the rejection. It turned into hatred, and she made it a matter of her pride. To take revenge, she had a spell cast on you by a dark practitioner, a spell so strong it would snatch the soul of any man who married you on the very first night. There would be nothing wrong with your body, but your presence would carry the shadow of death. My mind went blank. My parents, the 4 white shrouds, the empty bridal rooms, the silent wedding nights, they all began spinning before my eyes, one after the other. She stole your happiness, your dignity, your social respect. And the worst part is, she knowingly let you suffer, while you bore the punishment in silence, completely unaware. A scream nearly escaped my throat. How could she? How could she do this to her own niece? Yes, daughter. Some people let their egos fight even with God. In that moment, it felt like a locked door within me had suddenly opened, releasing centuries of darkness. Tears flowed down my face, and I folded my hands before the imam without thinking. Please save me. I can't take this anymore. He consoled me. Don't worry, daughter. God's help is always greater than the plans of the oppressors. I will perform healing on you. Ruqya Sharia. By God's will, this magic will be completely destroyed, but you must remain patient, consistent in prayer, and mindful of your faith. Shehzad's mother hugged me tightly like I was her own daughter. We will not leave you alone. You are one of us now. That night, for the first time, I cried to God, not with complaints or questions, just tears and his name. And perhaps, after a very long time, I felt my heart lighten in prostration. The imam began the spiritual treatment. He visited daily, reciting the Quran, blessing water, whispering verses into my ears. Slowly, I felt as if a fog was lifting. Days passed, and then one day he said to me, "You are free now. The magic has been broken." And upon hearing those words, I collapsed into prostration. Amidst the flowing tears, I tasted peace, for the very first time. But that peace was just the beginning of healing, not the end of trials. The spell had been undone, yet the Imam's voice still echoes in my heart. You are free now, Hasina. Those words felt like a divine proclamation. It was as though years of broken sleep had returned to me in one moment. I bowed down and thanked God, tears streaming from my eyes. Not out of fear this time, but submission. The weight that had clung to my soul before every wedding was gone. I no longer feared death, not for myself or anyone else. The Imam said, Now by God's mercy, your life will begin again, this time without the shadow. Days passed. I started to notice changes within myself. I could now look in the mirror without wondering if my face was a curse. The Imam and his family had become closer to me. They were no longer just neighbors. They were companions in my suffering and witnesses to my prayers. Then one day, the Imam and his wife visited my home. There was a distinct glow on their faces, as if they had come bearing good news. I welcomed them warmly, but there was a strange uneasiness in my heart. The Imam began gently, Daughter Hasina, by God's command, you are now free from the spiritual chains that had been blocking your happiness for years. But this freedom was not granted so you could live alone. Allah has opened a new door of light for you. I listened in silence. There is someone I know, a pious, humble, and sincere man. His wife passed away, and he is now seeking peace in life. We believe you and he were made to support one another. We would like to see you marry him. My breath caught for a moment. I felt a faint heartbeat, soft, hesitant, but alive. I quietly asked, Does he know about me? Yes, daughter, he knows everything. But he's not looking at your past, only your present. He wishes to accept you with dignity. I paused for a few moments to think. For the first time in my life, a door was opening without force. No pressure, no compulsion, only respect and sincerity. Finally, I said yes, submitting myself to God's plan. The wedding ceremony was simple but deeply touching. The Imam himself recited the marriage sermon, and my tears flowed in gratitude during prostration. There were no drums, no noise, just peace. Peace that settled in my heart for the first time after years of storms. On the wedding night, I sat in my new room dressed in red, but this time, there was no fear in my eyes, no looming shadows, only prayer and hope. When my husband entered the room, he came close and said softly, It's not your beauty that moved me. It's your story. You are a living symbol of patience. And in that moment, I felt with all my heart that this man was truly sent by God. He held my hand and spent time with me with the utmost respect. He understood my boundaries, honored my scars, and in every word, he accepted my being. The night passed, but my misfortune did not return. The morning was alive, the sun bright, and I felt alive. A few days later, the Imam visited again. In his hand was a torn piece of newspaper. His expression was serious, as if he carried a heavy burden. I asked him, Is everything okay? Without a word, he placed the clipping in front of me. The headline read, Mother and son killed in car accident. Notorious faith healer and his mother die on the spot. My eyes read the words, but my heart recognized the names. My aunt and Faraz. My lips froze. When did this happen? The Imam sighed deeply. A few days ago. And do you remember what I said? When dark magic is undone, its practitioners often can't survive the recoil. A chill ran through my soul. I didn't hate them, only sorrow remained. Sorrow that they had burned their own lives in the fire of hatred. Faraz, who turned rejection into ego, and my aunt, who repaid love with cruelty. Tears rolled down my face. The Imam held my hand. Daughter, this is the power of God. Your patience, your prayers, and your truth have finally been answered. You are now free, completely. And that day, I realized God may delay, but he never forgets. The sudden death of my aunt and Faraz stirred a strange feeling in my heart. I was never the type to seek revenge, but when the truth surfaced, the tears came. Not from triumph, but from grief. If only she hadn't chosen her ego over everything else, perhaps she would still be alive. And so would I. But now, a new door of life had opened for me. Life with the man recommended by the Imam was unfolding in peace. He was simple, hardworking, and deeply kind. After marriage, even the smallest of his gestures felt like answered prayers. He gave me time, listened to me, and respected my feelings. What touched me the most was that he never reminded me of my painful past. He never used it against me. He accepted me as I was, quiet, serious, yet like a flower slowly blooming again. One day, as I was working in the kitchen, he came from behind and said gently, "Hasina, your tea each morning gives me the strength I need for the whole day." I smiled, but deep inside a calm wave spread through my heart. Love, when not forced, feels priceless. There was a new change taking root within me. The girl who once feared her own shadow was now learning to walk in the light. Slowly, I stopped tutoring and began focusing on my home. For the first time, I felt like I was needed by someone, a complete relationship that nourished not just the body, but the soul too. A few months into the marriage, another joy came knocking on my door. I started feeling an unusual sensation, weakness, nausea, and constant fatigue. At first, I dismissed it as a minor health issue, but when it persisted, my husband gently said, "Let's visit the doctor tomorrow." The next day at the hospital, I heard news I had never imagined in my wildest dreams. "You're going to be a mother." Tears welled up in my eyes. That sentence felt like a dream whose fulfillment healed every scar life had carved into me. All those nights, all those wedding nights that ended in the silence of death, had now turned into the promise of new life. When I returned home, my husband saw tears in my eyes and asked with concern, "Is everything okay?" I softly held his hand and whispered, "We're going to be 3. I saw in his eyes a blend of surprise, joy, and deep gratitude. He embraced me tightly, an embrace that offered only safety, not betrayal. This news breathed new life into the barren corners of my heart. My mornings became vibrant, and my nights glowed with moonlight. My face, once veiled with sadness, began to bloom again. The neighborhood women who once viewed me as a symbol of bad luck now came to me for advice. Some about childbirth, others for prayers. One day, I visited the Imam's house to thank him. He placed his hand gently on my forehead and said, "Daughter, your patience is bringing you a rank that even a million prayers can't easily reach. May Allah keep you and your child safe." I bent down and kissed his hand, but in one hidden corner of my heart, a question still lingered. Is this happiness permanent? Has fate truly shown me mercy? Or is this the beginning of a new test? But then I became the answer to my own question. I had endured so much that I had no right to doubt Allah's mercy now. That night, I bowed down in prostration and prayed, "O Allah, if this happiness is a dream, let me remain in the dream. But if it is reality, then grant me the ability to thank you with every breath." When I rose from prostration, it felt as if the Almighty had whispered into my heart, "I never abandon those who are patient, Hasina." With those words, it felt as if a divine hand touched my soul. I felt transformed. Though my eyes were wet, there was a light in my heart, one that doesn't tie you to the earth but connects you to the heavens. Every day with my husband became filled with peace. He took great care of me, medicine, meals on time, every small task he did himself. Whenever I felt weak, he would recite the Quran and say, "This child is a trust from Allah. You must stay strong for both of you." And in every moment, I felt the tiny life inside me and thanked God. I wished that this child be born, not just from my body, but also from my prayers. I hoped this new soul would be the beginning of a new chapter in my life, a life that would turn my painful story into redemption. One day, I decided to visit my mother's grave and make a special prayer. I asked my husband for permission, and the next morning I went to the graveyard. As I stood there, it was like all the fog of the past returned to my eyes. I placed my hand on her grave and cried for a long time. "Mother, look, your daughter is finally happy. There are no more shadows, no more footsteps behind me. Your prayers have been answered." "Mother," when I returned home, my heart felt lighter, yet a strange ache lingered inside, as if something was still incomplete. Perhaps now, more than ever, I began to feel my mother's absence. Happiness, when it finally arrives, is something we want to share first with those closest to our hearts. And who is closer than a mother? That evening, I pulled out an old diary I had found in her trunk after she passed away. It contained her everyday thoughts, prayers, and many concerned lines about me. On one page, she had written, "My daughter Hasina is so beautiful, but I fear for her destiny. Oh Allah, if my life ends, protect my daughter under your care." I broke into tears. My mother's love was still alive, even in ink and paper. The next evening, the imam's wife came to visit. In her hand was a silver ring. She handed it to me and said, "This belonged to my mother. In our family, whenever a woman becomes a mother, this ring becomes a part of her joy. Today, it belongs to you." I held the ring to my eyes. It wasn't just jewelry, it was a symbol of acceptance. The society that had once pushed me outside its circle was now welcoming me back. But this time with honor and dignity. Now I counted every passing day, wondering when the baby would arrive, what he or she would look like, and if I'd one day share my painful past with them. Or just whisper, "You are the redemption of my life." Tears welled in my eyes again. My husband came and asked gently, What's wrong?" I replied, "I want this child to never cry, to never fear, to never be broken." He smiled and said, "If you're his mother, he'll never be weak." A new life was growing inside me. A life that was quietly devouring all my loneliness, despair, and trauma, replacing them with tenderness, hope, and purpose. Every morning felt like the sun was rising just for me, and every evening, the baby's gentle movements inside me felt like soft lullabies to my soul. My husband was by my side through it all. He didn't just care for my physical state, but he could read every subtle shift in my emotions. He had a habit. Every night before bed, he would place his hand on my belly and recite verses from the Quran. It felt like the first sound reaching my child's ears was the word of Allah. Life had finally come full circle. I often asked myself, is all of this real? Sometimes it felt like someone else's story. The tale of a woman who had seen 4 wedding nights turn into funerals, who was once considered a walking curse, and now that same woman was about to become a mother. One day, I stood on the rooftop, prayer beads in hand, a gentle smile on my lips. The air carried a fragrant breeze. I closed my eyes and whispered a heartfelt prayer. "Oh Allah, protect my child. Let him be born with better fate than mine." At that moment, my breath caught. Someone knocked on the door below. My husband went to check and returned holding a dusty, yellowed envelope. "This letter is for you," he said. A stranger left it at the door and disappeared. A strange unease stirred in my chest. I opened the envelope. Inside was a photo. Me with Hamdan, a picture from my first wedding, one I had never seen before. Along with it was a small folded note that read, "Your time is not over. He's coming back to take you." My hands began to tremble. The photo slipped from my fingers. My husband caught me as I staggered. "What happened, Hasina?" he asked in alarm. I could barely speak. "This picture. These words, I've heard this voice before." He helped me sit down, and I told him everything, how I often had dreams where I was wrapped in white, standing alone in a dark place, and a man's voice would scream, "You were mine and will always be mine." My husband listened silently, but I saw worry flicker in his eyes. That same night, I had another dream. I was standing in a pitch-black room, shadows dancing around me. Suddenly, Faraz appeared, my late cousin, the son of my aunt. But he didn't look like the boy I once knew. His eyes were blood red, his face covered in bruises, and from his mouth spewed curses. "You took everything from me. Your husband survived. Will your child survive too?" "No, Hasina. You were mine, and you will die just like I did." I woke up screaming. My breath was short and sharp. My husband rushed to me, gave me water, and held my trembling hands. "It's just a dream," he whispered. "Only a dream. The magic is gone. Allah is with you." But something deep inside me trembled, like an old scar aching once more. I decided to call Imam Sahib. He came the next day. I told him about the dream, the letter, the photo. After listening patiently, he said, "And daughter, when black magic is broken, its residual effects take time to fade. Evil spirits don't let go easily, especially if they operate through the dead. But don't fear. This is the final test. Just keep remembering Allah." He recited Quran throughout the house and blew blessings into water for me to drink. I felt a little peace, but a quiet storm still brewed inside. My condition became more intense. The doctor said, "The baby could arrive any time now. Total rest is needed." My husband stayed with me like a second heartbeat. I once asked him, "Are you afraid too?" He smiled and said, "I'm only afraid for you, but my faith in Allah is greater than your past." That night, as I lay in bed, I felt someone approaching. I opened my eyes. My husband wasn't there. A fog rolled across my vision. Beyond it, Faraz's face. "I'm back, Hasina." And then, everything went blurry. The night was deep. The room wasn't dark, but something darker had entered my soul. That dream, that face. Faraz, still lingering around my spirit like an unwelcome shadow. My eyes were closed, but sleep was nowhere. Pain began curling through my body. Perhaps it was time. The child I had cried for, waited for, prayed for, was ready to be born. My husband was next to me, like a silent companion to my every breath. I looked into his eyes and whispered, "I think it's time." He called Imam Sahib and began getting us ready for the hospital. As I climbed into the car, a sharp pain struck my back. My eyes welled with tears, but my lips repeated one thing: "Oh Allah, let this be the end of my test." At the hospital, I was taken to the labor ward. Voices, footsteps, machines. My heart beat loud in my ears. In the glowing white room, everything began to fade. I could hear only my heart and another voice. The same terrifying echo. "You were mine, and always will be." My eyes were shut, but my spirit had awakened. Farah's shadow wrapped around me. I felt him there, in the walls, behind the lights, near my breath. I screamed, "No, no, for the sake of Allah, go away." Doctors were startled. A nurse wiped my forehead, whispering, "Be patient, the baby is coming." At that moment, I heard the Quran being recited. My husband, seated right outside, reading Surah Yasin. His voice reached into my soul, healing me. And then, a whisper inside me. "Is my mercy less than your fear, Hasina?" I closed my eyes and cried out, "Oh Allah, my Lord, if you're giving me death, give my child life. And if you're giving me life, erase every shadow of my past." Pain soared. My breath broke. Everything slowed. Then a cry, but it wasn't mine. It was my child's. Light spread softly through the room like glowing wings on the walls. A nurse came to me and said, "Congratulations, it's a boy." Tears fell. Years of darkness lifted in an instant. I held my child, tiny hands, closed eyes, strong breaths. I whispered, "You are my life, my promise, my prayer, my victory." My husband entered the room. His eyes were teary, his face peaceful. He kissed our son's forehead and looked at me. "You're alive. And so is he." "We are," I said, "because our Lord never let us die." A few days passed in the hospital. Then we returned home. Imam Sahib came to name our baby. He recited the call to prayer and said, "His name will be Sufyan, for he will be a symbol of patience, knowledge, and guidance." I held my son to my chest and thanked Allah once again, but inside me a quiet question still remained. That shadow of Faraz, that dream, that message, he will return for you? Has it all really ended, or? The Imam gently placed his hand on my shoulder. "Daughter, the devil's final attack is always the fiercest. But now light has entered your life. To tell you the truth, on the day your child was born, I saw a strange dream after the Fajr prayer." Farah stood by a riverbank and a voice called out to him, "The one you kept hurting has now forgiven you. You're stuck now. You can't move forward until her heart is truly clear." I stayed silent for a few moments and then softly said, "If he seeks forgiveness, I already gave it. Perhaps long ago." As I spoke, a final tear escaped my eye. And maybe with it, the last burden of my past. Sufyan's birth had changed the course of my life. Once known only as a widow, an omen, and a punished woman by society, I was now a mother. And not just a mother, but a woman who had been born from the shadow of death and surrendered her life in prayer. The healing brought into my life by my husband and the Imam had become part of my soul. Every corner of my home, every wall, every day was now filled with hope. Yet one part remained. The last door that held the deepest secret of my past. I still kept the letter, the one that read, "He will come back to take you." Months passed. Sufyan was now 5 months old. Whenever he woke up at night, I would hold him close and recite verses from the Quran. One night, as I gently rocked him to sleep, I whispered, "My son, if I'm not here one day, know that you are the reward of my patience." The next morning, the Imam came to my door. His face looked troubled. "Daughter, I need to tell you something. Last night, I saw a grave in my dream. Wrapped in white cloth, open, and a shadow stood inside. Suddenly, the grave turned into fire. A woman screamed, It was your aunt's voice." I froze. My aunt's? Yes. Then a dervish appeared and said, "You have reaped what you sowed. The one whose destiny you blocked, only her forgiveness can extinguish your flames." I thought to myself, hadn't I already forgiven both Faraz and my aunt from the depths of my heart? Then why this dream? Were their souls still wandering, unrested? Had their curses finally rebounded on themselves? I was lost in these thoughts when my husband said, "A young man came by, says he's a disciple of a spiritual healer. He wants to speak with you." My breath caught in my throat. "What's his name?" "Rayhan. He says he was sent for Faraz's redemption." I shut the door, held my baby close, and fell into prostration. Oh Allah, this time grant me the strength every human needs to complete their story. The next day, the young man came. He held a prayer bead in his hand, eyes lowered and face troubled. He sat down and spoke gently. "I am Rayhan. Your cousin Faraz gave me a message before he died." "A message? But he—" "Yes. But his soul has reached out to me many times. He's in deep anguish. He says he's remorseful for his actions. He says he's still imprisoned even after death, and only your full forgiveness can release him." I took a deep breath. "But I've already forgiven him." "No," he says, "forgiveness must be in action, not just in words. He says you must visit the shrine of the dervish, where he had the black magic done, and recite the Quran there." My heart began to race. "What if I don't go?" Rehan lowered his gaze. "Then he may never be freed. And worse, the shadow might return, but not to the grave, but to your son." I felt a sharp pain in my chest. "My son?" "Yes. Faraz says if you don't go, the shadow will move from that place to here." I couldn't sleep that night. I kept staring at Sufyan's face and made up my mind. The next morning, I went to that shrine with the Imam, my husband, and Sufyan. The place where my fate had once been locked away. There was silence, still air, and the ground felt heavy beneath our feet. I sat before the shrine and recited Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah Yasin, and Surah Al-Falaq. With every verse, it felt like a chain was breaking away from my body. When I reached the final verse, my son let out a loud cry, "Batay!" And in that same moment, a scream echoed through the air. "Have you freed me?" A smile crept onto my lips. "Yes, Faraz. I forgive you. For the sake of Allah. Go. Now." The wind picked up. A black shroud flew from the shrine and vanished into the sky. I held Sufyan close. The Imam called the adhan and looked toward the heavens. "Allahu Akbar. The best outcome is for those who learn to forgive." We returned home. Today, I'm not just a mother, I'm an example. Sufyan plays in my courtyard, and I know that the life which once dug my grave, yes, I chose to forgive it and found my salvation. But one thought still echoes in my heart. What if I hadn't forgiven? Perhaps there would be no laughter from Sufyan. and I'd still be standing at the doorway waiting for the shadow of death to return.